There's so much your church could be doing on Instagram and TikTok. You know that, we all know that. But what if you don't have that much time? What if it's just not realistic for you and your church to spend months experimenting with different techniques and strategies to hopefully find the one that clicks? The good news is there is a blueprint that your church can follow. You don't need to be a big church, a flashy church, a highly affluent church for this to work. You'll only really need to focus on one primary post type. So it's simple. You won't need to create content from scratch because we're going to use what your church already has. And I'm going to show you real examples of everyday churches just like yours that are following this framework. Plus, I even put together a free downloadable checklist for you that I'll share at the end of this video. Let's begin by highlighting one of the advantages that your church has on social media compared to virtually every other industry, because it's common for churches to note their deficiencies online. We're understaffed. We don't have someone that really understands digital. Our budget is small. And look, those challenges can be very real. But let's also not overlook the unique advantages your church has. Think of it this way. For the vast majority of churches, the big event of your week is Sunday service. And the biggest slice of that weekend service is the message being preached. And who's in charge of the sermon each week? Well, generally, that responsibility falls on the senior leadership of the church, meaning every week, the senior leader of your church is working on creating content that will be accessible to your congregation and the people you're trying to reach. And once that content is created, it'll be shared from a literal pedestal for as many people to hear as possible. And I cannot think of a better organizational rhythm than that to take advantage of social media. Like, think of other industries. If you're the senior leader at a law firm, a real estate agency, your local dentist, you're working on cases, you're closing deals, you're identifying cavities. Those are your primary responsibilities. And then you have to contend with social on top of that. But in our churches, one of the primary responsibilities of senior leadership is literally creating content that can then be repurposed for social. It's a baked-in advantage that most every church can benefit from. We just need to lean into it, and here's how. I want to introduce you to One Church, a non-denominational church from Texas, IamOneChurch.com. Find them on social at IamOneChurch. You can look at their TikTok account here. As of this recording, close to 120,000 followers. They've posted around 85 total videos, and if you look at this chart from Social Blade that shows their account metrics for 2022, you can see these spikes in likes and followers. At the end of March, a spike of about 10,000 followers and 100,000 likes, and then at the end of April, a similarly sized spike. So what's going on here? Well, those big jumps are the results of videos they've published getting a ton of organic reach, translating to new followers and a ton of engagement on those videos. But what's so special about those videos? Well, One Church is using what I call the hook method. And I'm going to show you what that means in just a second. But before we do that, make sure you like this video because it would make my day. And now, here's the principle that you need to latch on to. If you are a church that has video recordings of your sermons, you are sitting on a gold mine of content that can be repurposed for social media and reach dramatically more people than you ever could in a sanctuary. If you don't currently have video recordings of your sermons, that's okay. There's no better time to begin than right now. And keep in mind, we're not live streaming these videos to a television feed or online feed. This is for social media, where almost every video is recorded on someone's phone. So any church can do this irrespective of budget or existing gear. But you can't just upload those sermons as is. There's a special formula you need to follow. And here's how you need to do that. First, find parts of the sermon that are relevant to everyday life. We call this the hook. So for our example here of One Church, they preached a sermon on relationships, and the hook they extracted from the sermon was advice for single people. Now, what makes a great hook, generally? Well, the secret, it's actually pretty simple. Finding the intersections between faith and culture. Where can the good news cross paths with the lived experiences of the person you're trying to reach? And this idea comes from Jesus, because when Jesus spoke, he often used worldly ideas accessible to the average person as springboards to talk about the kingdom of God, whether that was agriculture, farming, baking, economics, labor, wine, sheep, etc. And the reason your hook should come from these intersections, faith and culture, is because it makes your content universally accessible. So back to our example of advice for single people. There will be followers of Jesus sitting in your congregation where that wisdom from Scripture will be applicable to them. And then, when that content gets posted on Reels and TikTok and Shorts, you could have someone come across that video with no affiliation with God or the church, and yet that wisdom could still be just as applicable to them. So it gives your video a chance of reaching a wide audience, which is what you need to see organic growth and big engagement. But it all starts with finding hooks that straddle that intersection of faith and culture. Let's look at a few more specific examples of good hooks from one church. Are you a workaholic? The problem with most marriages. Are you worried? And broadly speaking here, categories to draw good hooks can come from relationships, purpose, finances, parenting, just to name a few. These are areas where scriptural wisdom exists, and that wisdom is useful for all people. Now, let's start to bring this all together by looking at a couple of real examples and talking about a few very important tips to using this technique that you don't want to overlook.
Marriage makes good things great and bad things worse.
Making the best of your time while you're single.
Number 1, address your unresolved childhood issues.
Okay, so practical tip number 1 is you need to put your hook in the first couple seconds of your video because that is where attention is earned. Now, that's true of any social post, right? You want to stop the scroll. But traditionally on social, you're posting content that will be seen primarily by your existing audience, folks that know you online, chose to follow you, have some kind of rapport with you or your church. With short form videos and how they're discovered, many people that see your content won't be following you. They won't know who you or your church is. And you only have a couple of seconds to earn their attention before they swipe away. This is a really important thing to understand about TikTok and Reels and Shorts, the discovery aspect. Because instead of you curating your feed by choosing to follow people, TikTok's feed and the similar feeds on other social platforms that aim to replicate it use a personalized algorithm to determine what videos to show you. And this is how you, the creator, have your videos seen by people outside your existing following, enhanced organic reach. So you need to put your hook in the first couple seconds of the video. You can do this with a simple text overlay or even with the voiceover effect like you saw in that video example. And a good hook does two things. It introduces the subject matter and it calls out the target audience. So for example, advice for single people. Let's watch the hook from that video again.
Marriage makes good things great and bad things worse.
Making the best of your time while you're single.
Number 1, address your unresolved childhood issues.
Okay, so notice the pastor there, he doesn't say the hook aloud, right? Now why is that? Well, because the pastor is not going to set up the hook properly for a short form video. They're focused on preaching to the room they're in at that time. So the creative solution here is to use the TikTok voiceover edit to inject the hook into the video within the first couple of seconds to make up for that. And the voiceover effect, that's when you hear that robotic voice say, making the best of your time while you're single. And truthfully, the success of this video hinges on that little edit and getting that hook in there because the hook is that important. Practical tip number 2 is to find as many excerpts as you can from a single sermon. For one church in this example, they made 6 short vertical videos in total, netting them more than 1.5 million views on TikTok alone and thousands of new followers. Because remember, short form video is usually going to be about 60 seconds in length, but a sermon might be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or longer. And so ideally, you'll be able to mine multiple short form videos from a single message, which means you could get a week's worth of content from a single message. And then what happens after that? Well, it's Sunday again, meaning there's a new message being preached, and you can start this process all over again. Finally, if you think this strategy won't work for your church, let me encourage you. With another church that tried this and saw great results, I got this DM not too long ago. It says, Brady, I've seen you share people's testimonials, but never thought I'd be the one that's sending you one. This person went on to show me analytics from a sermon reels they published using the hook method, and the results, about 10 times as many content interactions and reach compared to their previous sermon reels that didn't use the hook method. And why do we care about numbers? Well, because they represent real people, like this comment thread from that church they had with a person that was inspired to return to church after they saw the reels. That DM came in from Instagram, where I'm posting my most timely content throughout the week, by the way, so follow me, both there and on TikTok, at Brady Shearer. Also, I've put together a downloadable checklist for this specific technique for you. It's linked in the description below and also linked on this video, so make sure you download that so you can revisit all the nitty-gritty details for making this work. You know, you might not remember everything perfectly from this video, which is why I made that checklist. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications because we're going to be exploring more ways to increase your organic reach on social as a church in the next couple of weeks. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust. We'll talk soon.